Alright, hi, Ashley, in case you forgot. um, no, um, this is for assignment 3 for Wallace Stevens and William Carlos Williams. Kind of wrote out what I was going to say, and it's like right on my screen here. It's like split screen camera in the transcript, so I'm just going to read it out. Carlos Williams seems like a good choice for this assignment due to his use of indentation in several poems from the selections. Mainly the ones that we read that show the similar form are To a Dog Injured in the Street and The Turtle. He uses a sort of descending form for both poems. He uses it for actually a number of them, but we didn't read them. It was just the two. I'll be focusing on The Turtle. Going into the stanzas, I see the stanzas in two ways. First way is either every third line completes a stanza and the lines flush with the left edge of the paper begin a new one, or there really are no stanzas. So there's the possibility that each line is a stanza or the entire poem is a complete one. The second one, though, the second way I see it is, yeah, okay, there's no stanzas. Alright, I forgot. That's where I read already. However, it doesn't really make much sense that each line stands on its own, because after the first 15 lines, it looks like there's a stanza break. Let me find the book. It's right here. With my notes. Okay. After the part to write a poem, should I have poems to write about a turtle? The turtle lives in the mud, but it is not mud-like. That's where it kind of breaks. I see the first 15 lines as kind of an introductory stanza, where the speaker talks more about why he wrote the poem than why he wrote the poem rather. Oh my goodness, I'm reading it and I forgot. Okay. I see those lines almost as an introductory stanza where the speaker discusses why he's writing a poem about a turtle before actually talking about the turtle. That's kind of hitting on figurative language. Although the lines are short, ranging from 3 to 5 words on average per line, I have in parentheses there are some exceptions, with a few lines being 1 or 2 words and one line being 6. The poem is read with a slow pace. I read it in a slow pace, and I think that's because of the use of the indents. The eyes generally read from left to right, so out of habit, we look for the beginning of the line all the way on the left-hand side. With indentations, however, your eyes are forced to travel more and more to the right and then swinging back to the left to start the new line. The indentation then forces us to take a longer pause between lines as we search for the beginning of certain lines, slowing the pace and rhythm despite the shorter ones. That took a lot of breath. Okay. The long pauses between lines give the subject, or the turtle, importance, as if he isn't just a turtle, but again, that's more figurative language. At first glance, seeing the structure, the reader would expect this poem to be like kind of whimsical, at least that's how I saw it. And it is, when discussing the turtle later on, it kind of is. However, with the use of indents, white space, and line spacing, they work with the content to show that, yes, this turtle is very important, that without him, nothing will stand. It's like, I don't know what line that is, but it's towards the end. Also, briefly, I want to touch on another one of Williams' poems, The Dance, just because it's completely different in its structure than the rest of the selections. It's almost like a paragraph with very short pauses between lines, because there really is no punctuation at the end of most of the lines. Actually, at any of the lines except for the first one and the last one, where the first and the last both end on premise. Oh, cool. I did not notice that. The structure is almost like a paragraph with very short pauses between lines, is condensed with very little white space. Because of this, I read at a much faster pace than the line length suggest, whereas I read the shorter lines from the turtle in a slower pace because of those indents. I see the dance as more run-on sentences, and it really is only 2 sentences. There is a rhyme scheme, very, very little one, and I only noticed it when I actually read it out loud. It centers on the ound sound, like O-U-N-D, like around, round, impound, fairgrounds, and even about at the end of line 8 is a near rhyme. He uses internal rhyme with these, and it gives the poem kind of a bouncy rhythm. Alright, enough about Williams Carlos Williams. I'm going to talk about Wallace Stevens. Alright. I chose 13 Ways of Looking at a Blackbird because it is kind of a unique structure. And it's different from the other ones that we read, where the other ones were kind of thicker in stanza length compared to this one. Compared to these. Yeah. Where am I? I chose because out of the three read, it also utilizes the most white space. He separates the stanzas into 13 parts to explain the subject, which is the blackbird. The stanzas themselves act as chapters to me to emphasize the different ways of looking at the content of each stanza, which is again the blackbird. The number of lines in each stanza varies, beginning with 2 tercets, then a couplet, and continuing with no fixed pattern. The only common structural aspects of stanza is line length, with the exception of part 3, which is a couplet, which I think I mentioned that later, but not that much, but yeah, it's a couplet. Yeah, I wrote here a couplet doesn't really allow for short lines because it's kind of standing, especially here, it's kind of standing on its own, and I don't feel like he would get his point across if it was 2 words a line, really. It seems like this poem is kind of 13 mini poems, kind of linked by the blackbird. He doesn't use indentation like Wallace does he is Wallace. He doesn't use indentation like Williams does. In Williams' works, even with the indentation, there's still a fixed form, whereas in Stevens' 13 Ways of Looking at a Blackbird, there isn't. However, Stevens uses the white space to separate each stanza, allowing for a longer pause between them. The separation has a huge impact on the tone and rhythm of the individual stanzas. Each stanza carries its own rhythm, with a few having some sort of rhyme scheme. Very few. Like, this is like reaching really far to find this rhyme scheme, honestly. One example, though, of a literary device, was underneath that whole musicality, I guess. In part 4, where it's a man and a woman are one, a man and a woman and a blackbird are one, that is definite use of anaphora, with, the first and third lines of a man and a woman, and the second and fourth are one. Another example is part 5, where the first line ends with prefer, and the last line of part 5 is after, so it's kind of that ER sound, but again, that's reaching. And then in part 12, the river is moving, the blackbird must be flying, with that ing sound. And yeah, I hope that answers everything. I'll see you next time.